Hi everyone, welcome to TECSperts, where we here at the East Carolina talk about the upcoming football game.
Trailing East Carolina by 8. Frazier across the field, boom, what a big hit!
This is Tori Poole, one of the football beat writers for the East Carolinian.
Taking a shot up top. Coverage on. Touchdown, Pirates!
It's Adam Decker, the only returner from last year besides me, who is now gone from football beat writer to football editor.
Just watch here. He's trying to cradle it. That ball never hit the ground.
This is Jaron Honeycutt, our other football beat writer. Hi, welcome to TECSperts. Today we're going to talk about ECU football going forward. You know, after the season, they finished 3-9 this year. First year in the Montgomery guy. So, talk to us about your impressions of the first season.
I think we saw some flashes of, things to make us hopeful in the future where, in the first two games, the ECU played well. They played well against NC State. We saw flashes of the offense where the offense was just clicking. I would say the South Carolina game, the offense was clicking. They were just turning the ball over at the worst times. So I would say we saw some flashes of some things. ECU definitely got, the younger players got some reps in, which will prove to be vital, next season, I think. So playing a little young was good too. But then also there's a lot of question marks going into it of how are they going to handle the problems that they had this year. They were at lack of depth at the defensive line, turning the ball over, not a true offensive or quarterback. Phil Nelson didn't really. We thought he had complete control of it, but of the quarterback position, but he really didn't. As we saw with Minshew coming up. So I don't know. There's a lot of question marks going in, but I do think that this was going to be a transition year, and I think we all knew that. I just think 3-9 was a little whoa.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, definitely 3-9 was. It was not only woe for us, but I'm sure Scotty Montgomery didn't expect that coming in either. And not only did the team learn, and like Adam said, it was a great thing that the young people that maybe it was the silver lining was that the younger guys got to play. So as they grow, that core will be a lot more solid and have experience, but also who grew and who learned a lot this year was Montgomery in his first year. And there were positives at the beginning of the year. They rode a good wave of momentum in and, beat North Carolina State, who had some pretty good wins. I mean, it shows you what they were capable of. And then after that, they just, that was their peak. And they, just went downhill from there. And it was tough. But the good thing is that this happened early. So Scotty Mo knows what he has to fix from now on. And he's already, I'm sure, and the grief he's taken from how much people care about their football in Greenville and coming in post, Ruffin McNeil firing. I'm sure he's learned a lot more lessons than people actually expect. So it'll be good to see where he's at next year. And see how much he learned from this year. That'll be what everybody's looking at. But it definitely was a learning year for everybody on that team. Even the seniors, learned how to man up and play for a team. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think it helps moving forward just for the fact of, when Montgomery came in, a lot of players, fans too, but there were players who were not sure about how they really felt about, Ruff leaving and their their feelings towards a new coach coming in and taking over this football program. But I think that now the players that, are staying that haven't graduated, I think having a year of Montgomery and seeing what he's capable of and how he kind of is going to help this team moving forward, because some of those people who weren't really all completely on his side, they might be graduating or they've, started to come on around to him, So I think it's more of they've both said a transition year. Besides that, there's nothing really else to it.
Now, Jaron, you had an interesting column this Thursday's paper. One of the things I thought that you mentioned was interesting was you talked about Ruffin McNeil's recruiting. Do you think that Montgomery got handed kind of a bad bag of players?
I don't want to undercut any of the players, but I do feel he definitely doesn't have the players that he would like to have for what he's trying to do here. And I think that, and not any disrespect for the Conference USA or any of those players, he's got talented players on this team, but it's American football. American football, made a name for itself this year. They beat power teams. All over the board. Houston did, and you look at who Houston beat. You beat Oklahoma, and then you beat who they just beat last year in the ACC. I don't remember. It was a good team.
Florida State, I think.
Yeah, Was it Florida State?
I think it was Florida.
But anyways, they're beating Power 5 teams, but they're losing 3 conference games and not even making it to our conference championship, or the American Conference Championship. So you look at, I mean, not only is the recruiting right now is what needs to be stepped up, but just the mentality, because we're no longer in the ECU is no longer in the Conference USA. They're in the American, and they're playing hard teams like that. So you have to keep up with who's around you. You're going to eventually be the odd man out, and so. I just think what Ruff was doing, when they said they let him go, the first thing he was about to do before he got the unexpected news was hit the road and recruit his big man. And I think even Ruff and McNeil knew he was lacking in the trenches on size. And if you look around, it shows. It really did show this year. I mean, you had Commissing get suspended or expelled from the team, and you've had people get hurt, but there was absolutely no depth on that line that was really stopping the run or getting to the. I mean, obviously it showed getting to the passer because they were last in the NCAA. And on the other side, at times Philip Nelson was getting, might have been his fault, but he was getting roughed up, and a lot of times it was the line's fault. And so it's just Scotty Moe at Duke. He went out and got gems, like Jamison Crowder and Renner and people like that. He'll know who to bring in. That's what I think a big reason that. Comfort brought him in was because he knew what he could do on the road recruiting. Cutliff is no slouch with recruiting either, and that those connects come through Scotty Montgomery. So this is going to be the big, all lights on Scotty, this offseason. And as a matter of fact, he just lost a big recruit that he got the other day. I won't mention his name, but it's the guy from Rutgers that he got brought up again on sexual assault charges. So he had to cut ties with him. I think that was yesterday, and that was one of their biggest JUCO recruits in the nation. He was, I think, a top 10 pass rusher. So that hurt. And, one player affects all. So we'll see where that goes from now on and how he can step up his recruiting after that loss, too, because that was a big blow, actually, recruiting-wise.
ECU, too, they really didn't have a consistent rushing attack this year. If you look at it, there were games when we're thinking, oh, here come the coming out party for, the running backs in the ground game, but really didn't happen. They had games when it was virtually non-existent. So back to what you were saying about the trenches, maybe the offensive line wasn't getting any push. It's definitely something it needs to address. But also, I think ECU's offense is without a doubt drifted towards the air raid based on all the players that they have. You think the Lincoln Rileys, the Dave Nichols, it was just the air raid, spread them out, throw the ball 50, 60 times a game, where now we're seeing more of the pro-style offense, which is why we may have seen a little bit of problems this year, which is what we meant by a transition year. So, another recruiting class under his belt. Montgomery will have 2 recruiting classes. Maybe we'll start to see some brighter things out of that pro-style offense that we didn't get to see this year. So, yeah, just an overall transition. Montgomery's trying to run it his way, but the team isn't necessarily built to be run like he wants to at this exact time. So we'll definitely see come next fall.
And there were a lot of Montgomery's freshmen that got some valuable playing time this year towards the end of the year. So that'll be fare well for him next year. I really do think that in a matter of 2 years, I hope they give Montgomery time, even if he doesn't do it next year, because I think that they need to let his recruits play out. He's. I mean, you look at him bringing in Gore last year, who turned in a straight year, and Kobe Gore is the tallest cornerback in the nation, and he got burnt a few times, but he ultimately became a solid bid in the secondary. He was always, either starting the safety or starting at corner. You got, his transfer from Auburn, Irvin, coming in, and that kid's going to be solid in the secondary. He played as a true freshman there. I mean, and then there's Corey Sargent. You have good guys back there on your defense already. Find a pass rush, and that, fill it in at linebacker. All you need is some people that can, play around and run left to right, and then find a valuable pass rush, and you already got you a defense that, and he's got. It's just, I feel like there's just only a few missing pieces that he could be very wise and scoop up, and it could be a whole different atmosphere here in 2 years. It'd be playing for a bowl game or something, but it's just. You can't say anything.
I think you give him at least 2 more years. I would think.
So the thing about it is, before the season, all 3 of you actually had them winning. So what do you think went wrong that kind of threw it off the trail? Do y'all think that maybe y'all didn't realize how bad this team was, or how poor
Well,
it was.
like I kind of hinted to earlier, I predicted a 7-5 season, still making it. They went 5-7 last season under Ruffin McNeil. Scotty Montgomery comes in, new approach, and I was thinking that the team was going to fare pretty well this year, but maybe just a lot of unfortunate things happened. I think we did know it was going to be a transition year, and I knew that before the season even started, but no one, like I said earlier, no one knew it would be a 3-9 transition year. And I think a lot of that, I swear, I'm going to keep harping on it, is just the change of the system. So new defensive scheme, new offensive scheme. I think that is huge. If you're gifted towards playing one way and then you try to change that way of play, it's going to take some time to do that. So that's really what I think it is, because if you look at the games, ECU would have 500 yards of offense, and that is, that's impressive. That's a lot of yards. That's enough yards to win you the game. But turning the ball over inside the red zone consistently, that's going to hinder you. Missing field goals, that's going to hinder you. There are all kind of things like that. That was the basic storyline of this entire season, and it all comes back to one thing. Maybe that they're just the lack of depth, and they're not comfortable with where they're playing right now. They're not comfortable in their position. They're not comfortable in their scheme. They're not, so that's really all I can say about it, is that it was a transition year without a doubt. It was just more of a transition year than a lot of us thought.
I think there's so many cliches for football. Two of them are, one is the game of inches, and you look at how many turnovers you had or how many times they came up short on fourth down. Like Coach Montgomery said, it always was a difference between having 2nd and 9 and 2nd and 3 or something, because it ended up on fourth down. It always would be 4th and 1, should we go for it? And they didn't. And then you look at it, it's always about momentum. If you go back and look when they were 2-0, what was the biggest thing of the season? For me, that South Carolina opening kickoff, when they took it all the way to about the
10-yard line.
And then they scored the play after that. It's just like that was the peak of the season, and then everything was going downhill after that.
And if you think of that too, that was a really good point you made. But then the next game, the special teams didn't give the team a chance at Virginia Tech either. So maybe it was just poor special teams play, around the 3rd, 4th, 5th game of the season, and then that really put a bad spiral on the team. Because the Virginia Tech game, that the way that special teams play, there was nothing the offense or defense could have done.
Right.
With the way that special teams.
And Tori, you had an interesting quote from Montgomery that basically said, Virginia Tech beat us up and we never recovered from that.
Yeah.
Kind of talk about that.
It's basically what he said. He said that they were doing well, and then they got to Virginia Tech, and it was just a win that they couldn't stop bleeding. It kept going, and I think also what happened was, like I mentioned this a little bit earlier about how some players weren't completely behind Montgomery. I think it started off being like, okay, we're 2-0, like we beat these two teams, we beat in-state rival NC State, but then they start losing on the road, and then they have that just beating against Virginia Tech, and I think it just made all the entire team just kind of feel like, this wouldn't happen if Ruff was here. That's not necessarily true, but you can't help but kind of feel that way. You can't help but kind of not want to blame, your players, people better, And I think that once you start getting into that kind of that trench, that it's not going to come out, and just self-inflicted wounds. Like they had the talent to do well. You saw, like you said, 500 yards a game. The least amount of yards they had this season was against Temple, a number 3 defense. But before that, it was Navy, and it was still like 425 yards, which given that's still a lot of yards offensively, but it doesn't show when you have a record of 3-9. It's all these terrible and self-inflicted wounds of turnovers, missed chances. It's just one of those things. But like he said, it's just one of those things when you start off deep and putting yourself behind, then it's just hard to recover once you're already behind like that.
I think another thing about that Virginia Tech game, and I think why Hans Montgomery, is I think also it showed how young he was of a coach, because what I think it was an example was him losing his grasp for a little bit and letting it slip away, because if you look at it, you always play your best players. You're here to win. What he said in the presser after that game was he has to sit down and figure who his best players are to put in on special teams. If you're not playing your best players, that obviously to me means that they should always be on the field. I know it's special teams, but you look how well they did after those points. That's a matter of letting go of your grip a little bit, and then having two teams beat you, and that's it's 2 games and you're still bowl eligible after that, but it just is a swipe at your momentum. I just think that Virginia Tech game really did beat him up.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Not to interrupt you, but something that I think that the special teams play with, having starters perform on special teams is maybe what I've said a couple times is lack of depth. Because if you look at special teams across the country, special teams plays where you let your younger guys get in, they get some game time experience, they get a couple hits under their belt, and that provides them, holds them over until they get the chance to end up starting.
White.
Yeah, so that it's their way to prove themselves that they're worthy of this. They're not afraid under the spotlight and things like that. And maybe that's what we saw, is that the lack of depth ECU had was shown on special teams, perhaps, where blocked field goal, blocked punt, returned punt to the house. It was just all long kickoff returns. It was just everything was going wrong for that unit. So maybe that unit was young, wasn't very deep, and that's why we started seeing the Jordan Williams, and you started seeing the other guys step in and start playing with the special teams, because somebody had to make up for the lack of depth that they had.
Which stems back to also recruiting.
Yeah. So.
Right. So now the last thing we're going to really talk about here
Predictions.
is of course the one bright spot on the season. Of course, Zay Jones, the only man with 390 catches in NCAA history, almost 400, 399. He's a senior and he's graduating, so he's entering the draft. Where do y'all think that he's going to go?
Well, let me say first, absolutely breaks my heart that he got 399 catches. Come on, one more, man. Just one. You think back to that South Carolina game, they took one away from him. Boom, that's 400 catches.
That would have been the reception
So,
record.
He has 400 in our heart.
Man, but it really was as simple at times. When the running game was non-existent, Jimmy Williams struggled getting open or struggled with drop balls. It really was at times shut down Zay Jones and you shut down ECU's offense. And that really, really was how it was at times.
And they couldn't shut down Zay Jones.
Exactly. He has potential to be a 5-tool receiver, I would think. He proved he's got the speed. He can beat you downfield this year. He's got the hands. He's big. He's physical. He can block. I just think, and I don't remember where I saw it, but it was something on a draft big board. He was in the 40s, which is a second-round pick. Now, still, there's a lot of time, pro days, combine. There's still a lot of things that go on into that. But if you're looking at makeup, character, he's not going to hurt himself in that, in that part. That's like the draft storyline always. It's some kid who's extremely talented. Look at Laramie Tunsil in the draft. The video came out of him with the marijuana use and things like that, where Zay Jones, you won't have to worry about anything like that. He's not going to fall down the rankings because of his character and how he acts. It's all going to be football related, and I think he's a diamond in the rough for a team potentially. I think he can, I think in 2-3 years he'll be on one of our fantasy lineups. So I'm thinking third round. My gut's telling me third round. I think he could be a second round pick, but I'm thinking third round.
Yeah, I think he's I don't want to say at most because he could go high second, but I think he's a mid-second to third round guy. Mm-hmm. I don't see with
you being a DB, think about Zay Jones. How what were some? What
well, he's just so smooth.
You could shut him down.
It's just he's so smooth. I think one thing that he's going to be challenged with in the league, and I'm not saying he's not physical. They're just going to challenge him and see if he is. DBs are going to get up. Because you really didn't see that much this year, was DBs are going to get up in his grill, in his chest area, and they're going to try to keep him on the line because he has a skinny frame. Mm-hmm. But, I think other than that, he's very smooth and he has a quick step. And that's going to be, what gets him his money is how smooth he is. And it's almost like he's chiseled perfectly at receiver. He has all the intangibles that you're looking for. But, it will really matter. That's what's good about it is until that draft day, he won't have to, well, I guess he will in the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl is going to be big for him because they're going to see him against the best DBs in the nation that will be in his face. So it'll be fun to watch that and see that on TV and see how well he does. But other than that, that's, there's no way if he gets through that test, he's not a mid-second round guy.
Yeah.
If I was a DB, that's the first thing I would do if I was playing against him, seeing his frame was just try not to let him, get off the line against me because he's smaller. But, his dad was a linebacker, 3-time Super Bowl champ, so it's not saying he's not. And his little brother's a linebacker. It's not saying he's not physical. Let's be real here. There's such thing as skinny strength and all that. So he probably has that because you don't see really anybody bodying on him on the field.
Yeah, it's one of those things with. I know he said it against Virginia Tech that after the game was over, the coach came directly to Zay and was like, "We made it our mission to shut you down in the first half. that was what we came out to do. And like he talked about how like he almost felt like flattered by that, the fact that they would pinpoint him out to be one of those people that they need to shut down. And he still, I mean, I can't remember exactly how many catches he had in that game, but it wasn't like a bad game for Zay or nothing like that. And it just goes to show that even when a team is trying their best to shut him down, it's still not going to happen completely. And I mean, like you said, that it'll just depend when he gets put against the best DBs in the in the nation to see how he'll stand up to him. But we've all talked about it a lot throughout the season, just our predictions about where we think he would go. And I think that y'all have kind of stayed where you were most of the time, I think. But I mean, I've said 3rd or 4th round just because I feel like a lot of people are going to underestimate his abilities. I think that he is a great receiver, and I think that he will do great things in the future. But I think that NFL teams are going to look at him and think that he played for a smaller school that didn't go up against big teams, big rivalries or anything like that. And so I think they're going to underestimate him. But I think that he is well-rounded enough to be in the 2nd round. But I just don't think he'll go there.
One thing I will say, though, if you're looking at if you look at Justin Hardy and you look at Zay Jones, Justin Hardy was a 4th round draft pick, and his ceiling, the highest point of his career he'll get is a slot receiver, number 3 receiver for a team. That is his absolute climax in the NFL. He's a really small, short-handed guy. He'll be a slot receiver. I don't see him being on the outside. And we've kind of seen that with the Falcons in these first 2 years. Zay Jones' ceiling is a lot higher than that. Zay Jones very well could potentially turn into a number 1 receiver in the NFL. Now, there's a lot of coulds there. There's still a lot that we need to know, but I do not doubt Zay in 2 or 3 years being a team's number 2 option. He's the number 2 receiver, so I think his ceiling is so much higher, which is why I find it hard to believe he'll go in the same round as Justin Hardy.
Yeah, golly, I don't know, man. He is they'll put weight on him too.
Yeah,
they will put weight on him, and I think that one thing ECU does have is, I mean, you might say that, hey, they're in the American, but they have a tough out-of-conference schedule, and every time you look on film against a receiver against, I mean, what gives you a good perspective on a receiver is when they're playing DBU and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech always has DBs, and he really did. He did very well in that game. There's nobody, like we were saying, that they really matched up as Zay Jones this year that he had to struggle with at all.
The worst game he had was against Temple. He only had 64 yards, but he still had 7 catches.
Yeah.
Like, that is not a bad game. But in NFL standards. But, yeah, you look at Virginia Tech, Bud Foster said he was gunning for him. Zay Jones was the only receiver with a reception, like, halfway through the 2nd quarter. He had 7 or 8 catches before Jimmy Williams got his first catch. So there's still so much. Zay Jones has such a high ceiling. And I also saw in the same thing where I saw that the big board he's going in the 40s, is that he right now is the number 3 ranked receiver. In that, now obviously we still have a lot of underclassmen that can declare for the draft. A lot of things can happen with the pro day and senior bowl and things like that. So a lot of things can happen. But if Zay Jones sticks to being the 3rd best receiver, that more often than not is a 1st round pick. Mm-hmm. More often than not. That's not. I'm not saying I think that's going to happen. But if he's the 3rd ranked receiver in the draft class, he's looking pretty. So.
Right, and I've been looking at some things myself, and I've seen Zay runs about a 4.5, somewhere in that range. And then also you look at the fact that you say number 3 wide receiver, that's about the same thing that I've been seeing. And if you look at the whole resume, he's 6'1", 6'2",
Yeah.
He's 197. Like you say, he's got the 5 tools.
Yeah.
He's got NFL pedigree. He doesn't have a problem, character-wise. He's not like one of those big,
He won't
big
drop a ball.
diva wide receivers.
Yeah, he won't drop. I can't remember a drop pass he had this year. He won't drop a ball, so ceiling's really high for Zay Jones. I'm excited to see where he ends up. So.
Only question is, do y'all think he can win the Blitnikoff?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
I think he should. If he doesn't, the only thing that is hurting him is the touchdowns. Day Westbrook has 15. Zay Jones has 8.
Yeah.
That is the big difference. But then if you're looking at the receptions in the yards, it tilts back Zay Jones' way. So if he doesn't, it's because of his touchdown total. So
I also think it would probably be the Big 12 bias also.
It could be that he's
Doesn't Jimmy
in a
Williams
smaller
have
school.
more touchdowns than Zay Jones this year? Or
Yeah.
am I wrong? See, and if you look at it that way,
I mean, but
No,
that's
no
but-
discredit.
Zay Jones
to
did
Williams,
all the
no
dirty
way.
I'm about to say, but Zay Jones set all those
Exactly,
up. Because
and you-
most of those are over the top.
You look at it, they didn't. I mean, for the most part, there wasn't even a running game, and Zay Jones was still getting open. Even when receivers,
Yeah.
like you said, at Virginia Tech weren't catching. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, like there's just so many contributing
Factors that could make him, have an excuse to not being a good receiver. But that dude was just a great receiver. Is a great receiver, and he will be. I have no problem getting behind him and putting my money where my
Yeah.
mouth is.
157 catches. That's ridiculous.
Should have been 158. Could have been 158.
I mean, 22 catches twice. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. All right, so we're about to sign off on the last TECSperts of the year, which of course we only do it for football. So this is going to definitely be Adam and Jaren's last TECSperts,
Yeah.
and most likely mine too. So Tori, it's all your show now.
Taking
It's
over
just
now.
her.
It's
Just
just
her.
me.
Yes, sir.
Oh.
All right, thank you
Good
for
morning.
watching. Thank you for watching all season long, and make sure you come back and watch us again next year.